Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel presents Comic Talk. Today, we're going to catch up with what our guests are doing to pass the time in quarantine land. We'll talk about the first horror comics that we read, our top picks for our favorite comic books to introduce new readers to. It's all coming up next on Comic Talk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Comic Talk, where we get together with a panel of guests to talk all about our favorite print medium. With us today is the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day, Ashton Greenwood.
Hey guys, what's up?
And our special guest today is one of the founders and co-owners of Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland. Please welcome Steve Anderson.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, everyone, and how's everybody doing?
Oh, rocking and rolling, selling comics any way I can.
Thank God, because I think everyone's just been like waiting for comics to come back. We're all ready. So, So Steve, let's talk a little bit about Third Eye Comics, which is your shop. You and your business partner Trish started Third Eye back in 2008. So, tell us what the early days of the store were like. In I think what was it, an 800 square foot space?
Yeah. So we opened in 2008. It was a tiny little storefront, and it was really right after the financial crisis. It was like May of 2008. So we're no strangers to operating under stress. It was cool. I mean, like I look back at every past year with like a little bit of nostalgia because it's different. You always look back at the past in a way where you're like, oh, it was so simple then, So it's cool. Like we really, it was me and Trish, and then for about a year it was just us, and then we brought on Torma, who many of our customers know now, who's been with us about 11 years, and it's been my favorite thing. I've never really done anything else. Before I opened Third Eye, I worked at a comic shop for several years, and it's all I know how to do.
Now, fast forward a few years and a few different locations, and now you're in a huge 10,000 square foot space. And you've expanded to 2 more comic stores as well as a gaming store. I mean, you have everything. How did you build your customer base to the point where you could open that many more shops? That's amazing.
Really, honestly, the thing that we've always focused on is just good customer service. That's always been our number one priority. It's the thing that we prioritize above all else. But we don't stop there. We do try to make sure that we want to give the best experience we can for every store that we have. And, stock, selection, customer service, all of it kind of comes together to make that Third Eye experience. But customer service is always the priority. That's what we always strive to give. And that's what carried us as far as we have. And we've been very lucky to have the best, most engaged comic book customers in the world following our store.
That's amazing. That's a really, really huge store. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's our mothership. That's the big guy. We love it.
So right now, obviously, the pandemic has kind of thrown a little bit of a wrench into the works, so to speak, for local comic and game shops. But now that you're back up and running, what have you been able to do for your customers to kind of get them back involved?
Yeah. We've been doing a lot of different stuff, pretty much anything that we can, to just stay engaged and keep continuity with our customers and keep serving them through all this. And early on, we put together a lot of new ways of doing business, which was extremely stressful because at Third Eye, when we do something new, like a new feature, we usually talk it to death for like 6 months and test it a little bit internally and kind of iron out all the kinks. Most of the new stuff we're doing and that we've been doing through this whole process, we had to figure out in the span of like a week to 2 weeks. It started with us offering curbside pickup. Once that got, removed as an option for us, we prioritized home delivery. We take our giant Third Eye van, which is super loud and super grabbing, and we take it to your neighborhood, and we bring you comics and contactlessly drop them off with you. And then we've done virtual shopping with Zoom, where we basically will schedule calls with people and walk them through our stores with the Zoom app. And that way they can get the experience that they're used to at Third Eye, which is us kind of like being like, you know, what kind of TV shows do you like? What are you reading lately? What is this? What is that? And then, you know, showing them, you know, like, oh, well, then you might like this, you might like that. What else? We introduced the Third Eye Binge Box, which is basically a curated monthly program of 3 graphic novels that fit a certain genre. So like we did sci-fi last month, and or no, it was Wizards and Warriors, and it was Darth Vader Volume 1, Hopper, and Low Volume 1 from Image Comics. And it kind of gives people a chance to try a curated selection from us. We can ship it out to them. God, what else have we been doing? We're doing a lot of different stuff. And mail order. We've been doing a ton of mail orders, shipping a lot of things. In fact, when this whole thing started, I called my diamond rep and I was like, I need like 20,000 mailers. And I was like, because I think these a lot.
That's awesome. Getting really creative. And I got to say, I love the van. When you were talking about that, I was like, I really hope that you have some really cool graphic on it, like maybe a dragon or like Star Wars.
Yeah. No, it's like a big old Third Eye fighter jet, you know, like barreling down 95.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So one last question before we get to the rest of the show. And this kind of ties in with the whole Back the Comeback campaign to get people to visit their comic and gaming stores. Why do you feel it's important for people to support their local comic shop and or gaming stores?
Easy. It's the hub. It's where it starts. Without your comic book store, you would not have the movies that you love today. You would not have Walking Dead. You would not have Watchmen. You would not have, you know, what became the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, all of these things that people, I mean, modern pop culture as we know it, you know, the thing that like, you know, is everywhere now, it always is born in the comic book store. And you need a physical brick and mortar comic book store to deliver that experience, because you need engaged comic book, you know, salespeople who can find the things that people like, hip them to the things that they might like, you know, kind of like, you know, get out there and champion books that may go under the radar. I mean, Walking Dead is probably the biggest example of that. You know, that was a book that was grown in the comic book store, turned into the success it is because of a brick and mortar comic book stores.
See, you guys are like our comic gurus. Like honestly.
Yeah, that's it. You know, we're there to, you know, spread the word, and you know, your local comic shop is run by people who literally just love this medium. That is what every comic shop owner has in common, is that every single one of them, you don't open a comic book store unless you love comics. And that's a very pure line to getting good recommendations and getting, you know, a great experience.
Aw, it's like the heart of comics. Well, so if you're in the Maryland, Virginia, DC area, be sure to check out one of Third Eye's awesome shops, because you will definitely find some amazing reading material there. And speaking of reading, let's check in on what our guests are reading or drawing or writing or watching or creating. It's time for What Are You Doing? So we want to ask each of our guests, what are you doing? We want to know what you're doing to pass the time in quarantine land. And for those of you watching, let us know in the comments what you're doing by using hashtag what are you doing. So let's start with you, Ashton.
Okay, so I kind of have 2 answers here. The first one is Avatar, The Last Airbender. Troy and I talked about it on Freebies World Weekly. It just came to Netflix at the beginning of this week, and I am beyond excited. I've already watched a ton of episodes. The problem is they're only like 20, 25 minutes, right? So you get watching it, and then you watch like a bunch of them, and all of a sudden you're on like this 3-hour Avatar bender that you didn't plan for. But I'm here for it. I love it. And I'm actually really excited to be rewatching it, because when it aired first, for whatever reason, like I didn't catch like the last like 10 episodes. So I have no clue how it ended. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends. I'm also starting on this. Shirley Jackson is one of my favorite authors, and this is the graphic novel adaptation of The Lottery. which is basically like every year they have a pool and they draw one male and one female between a certain age to brutally murder them to keep the population down. And it's actually this is what inspired Suzanne Collins to come up with the Hunger Games. So I'm excited to be reading this.
Interesting. I think we read that in like junior high or high school. I want to say I had to read that, The Lottery, back then. So that's really cool. I didn't know that they made a graphic novel. That's really awesome.
I didn't either. I'm excited about it.
And now one other question. How many episodes are there in Avatar?
61.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay. I thought it was going to be like One Piece where there's like 250 ongoing episodes. Well, right? Awesome.
I thought it was longer than that, but then I looked at it and I was like, it's only 60. I'll be done this by next week.
By next week. Well, I guess we don't really have much else to do, right?
Right.
What about you, Steve?
Right now, in terms of comics, I am super hyped for Death Metal, so I'm catching up on all the Dark Knights Metal stuff. I'm rereading all the Scott Snyder Dark Knights Metal and all the related tie-ins and stuff like that. I can't wait till June gets here because Death Metal looks so good. I grew up a DC Comics fan. I like Marvel a lot too, but I really love the DC multiverse, and I'm really excited about seeing all the crazy stuff that they've got planned with Death Metal. And then the other thing that I'm super digging right now, this is not comic book related, but I've been watching that McMillions like HBO special about the guys who did the crazy McDonald's scratch off scam, and I'm hooked on that.
It's so good. It's so addicting. Yeah. Like, who would have known it? I played that game. I'm like, who would have known?
Yeah, I bought all those French fries for nothing, you know.
I'll never trust them ever again.
No.
All right, let's look at the comments and see what we've got over there. What is our audience doing? Josh Geppi said he's reading new comics. Nice. That's what we all need to be doing now.
I agree.
All right. Now let's move on to our next segment, Firsts.
You always remember your first.
So anyone who knows comics knows that fans really love their first issues and their first appearances. So for first, we talk about some of the momentous comic book firsts that happened in our lives. And for this episode, we want to ask, because I was wrong earlier, so I'm right now, what are the first comic book movies that you saw, and how do you feel that it compared to the source material? And for those of you watching, let us know in the comments what your first was by using #first. So Steve, let's start with you. What was the first comic book movie that you saw?
The first one that I saw is probably not the best one. It was the Captain America movie, the one from the 90s, with the motorcycle. And that one wasn't very good. The first comic book movie I saw that made me go, oh my God, this is it. It's a tie between Blade and Batman with Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton Batman, like I had Joker Chuck Taylors, I had the bat symbol shaved into the back of my head. I was a bat kid, and I went crazy over that whole universe. And then Blade came out when I was a teenager, and that was like kind of like after I'd been reading comics for a while, and I was like, oh, it's a comic book movie, like done good, you know? Like I was like, this is really cool. So those are my two first, and those are my two favorites in terms of like just the ones that like had an impact.
And how do you feel they compared to the source materials?
So I think the Michael Keaton Batman is probably, in my opinion, the best. I think that's still the best. I think that Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Honestly, we've had a lot of good Jokers. So it's really hard to say he's the best, but he's definitely my favorite. And I like Michael Keaton as Batman. I think he's great. I think Tim Burton kind of balances the darkness with the like kind of weirdness of Batman to make like a really cool like comic book world that's like not too dark, but just dark enough. And Blade, I thought Blade was one of those movies that showed that the movies can sometimes make the comics even cooler. And I really like that, got me actually reading a lot more Blade comics. I'd never been like a huge fan of the character before that, and after watching the movie I was like, I got to check it out. And yeah, it's really cool. Those are my two like big ones in terms of impact.
I feel really weird that I didn't know Blade was a comic until now.
That's okay.
That's really awesome.
That's okay. Me too.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It kind of snuck out, and it was interesting because, like, I feel like without Blade, I don't think you would have the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, because that movie kind of showed everybody, like, comic book movies can be kind of, serious, like, I mean, like, and for the, for 1990, I mean, it might not be as serious now, but for 1997, it was like, whoa, there's blood everywhere, and what is this?
That first 5 minutes of the movie, my mom was like, she watched me watch that, and she's like, yeah, you're not watching this.
You're done.
Like, rave scene with the blood. She's like, yeah, no, this isn't happening.
Great.
What about you, Ashton?
Okay, so the first comic book movie that I saw was Spider-Man vs. Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. However, superhero comics aren't my preference, so I don't know that I didn't at that time, and I don't know that even now I have anything really to compare it to as a baseline. So to answer the question, like, I guess to the closest I possibly can, it would be The Walking Dead. And I mean, The Walking Dead, the thing I liked about The Walking Dead is it does a decent job of staying true to its source material, but diverging in ways that kind of make it interesting and stand on its own. And Daryl's probably like the key example for me of like additions that made sense and added a lot to it, but still staying true to like what Kirkman wanted it to be.
Nice. That was a really good. I liked that. I think I saw like an interview with Kirkman, and he said something about it was his opportunity on the show to fix things that he didn't quite get right in the comics, or he feel he got rushed on. Like,
right.
Is it spoilers to talk about like early Walking Dead comics now? Is that spoilers?
I don't think so.
Oh, I think you're fine. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
So, like, I remember he was talking about, like, Rick when he gets his hand cut off, and he was like, he remembered later on in the comics, he's like, oh, I just want to have him sitting around and opening a can of beans, and then I realized, oh, yeah, I cut his hand off because I was rushed on making something happen, and all of a sudden now I can't have him open a can of beans, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how you'd want to fix that in the TV show.
Yeah.
And then, what do you think about the show and how it compares to the comics? For you,
was that to me or to Steve?
Yeah, to you, Ashton.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a pretty fair shake in that you can indulge in either or both and have simultaneously the same experience and an entirely different experience. So, I mean, I think you're going to get something different out of it no matter how you indulge in it. My personal preference is towards the show just because I found it first and then I found the comics after the fact. But I think it's a pretty fair shake no matter which one you pick.
Yeah, that's a good answer because I mean they are so very different. So nice. Those are some good picks. I mean, mine was kind of freakier. I grew up on the old Christopher Reeve Superman movies with my dad. And I don't really remember too much, but I have like an affinity for Superman. But all I remember is I think it's the third one where the chick goes into some machine and she turns into like a robot and all the pieces start sticking to her. I think it's the one with Richard Pryor in it. And she comes out looking like a robot, and I that terrorized me for years.
Oh, man.
Oh, so yeah, that was my experience. Let's see what the audience has. Ilya, first was Garfield the movie. Oh my God, so good. Love my plump friend.
Those plump friend.
Josh, 89 Batman is my all-time fave. Steve, you're my new best friend. Oh, you have a new best friend. First at Blade. Tomb of Dracula, number 10. And then Ilya, Rick got his hand cut off. Oh my God, #ruin. Man, see, I was wondering about that.
I don't want to hear a single thing about it because I tried to get him to watch the show or read the comics or do anything, and he doesn't want to do like any sort of zombie material. He's not interested, so I don't want to hear about that comment.
I'm getting a note from Johnny saying that the hand cutoff was way back in issue 28. So I think what issue are they on now?
I think they went to like 190 or what was it? 193 that they ended with?
194.
Okay, so then I'm good. I'm like way back there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even think I had my story like that.
All right. Well, now that I'm in the clear, let's move on to our last segment, top picks. All right, for this round of top picks, we want to ask, what are your top comics that you would recommend to new readers? And you can let us know in the comments by using hashtag top comments or top picks. Let's start with Ashton. What is your top pick?
Okay, so I feel completely and totally unfit to answer this question given the fact that Steve's here and this is like his literal job is to get people on board. So anything I'm going to say is going to be completely blown out of the water in a minute when he answers this question.
No.
But yes, probably. I mean, I would say to start with, if you're already somebody that's kind of in the nerd community, maybe start with like a property that you already love. So like if you're a Star Wars fan, like that might be a good starting point because you already know a lot about it, or at least know enough about it to engage. And it can be kind of daunting to like dive into a fandom you don't know anything about and feel like you're overwhelmed. So I would recommend starting with something you are already familiar with, or if I had to like give recommendations of things that I think are accessible, I think because The Walking Dead's finished, that's a good one, and you can just get like all the trades start to finish. I will recommend Archie to anybody that listens. Anybody who knows me knows that. So that is probably the route that I would take. Steve, please give a better answer now.
Those are good answers, though. Those are good answers. So what we usually do is we kind of just ask what somebody's into in terms of other stuff they might like, whether it's TV shows or books or anything like that. But typically I've got a few go-tos. If the person is a little bit older, at least like say 16, 17, 18 or up, I usually go to Saga first. I think Saga is one of the most accessible, best written comics of the last decade. And it is a silver bullet to get people to say, I need the next one. And that's what you really, really want to, send somebody away is like, I got to see what happens next. Saga is the one that I always go to first. If it's some, an all ages, customers or somebody a little bit younger, maybe like, 12, 14, whatever. Maybe they want to get into superhero stuff. Some of the best all encompassing superhero stuff that kind of stands the test of time, holds up really well. Fans of all ages can read it. Are books like Batman Hush. That's the one I always recommend. Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. And the Brian Michael Bendis, Miles Morales, Spider-Man stuff. So those are kind of like three that I go to in that realm. And then I honestly, other than that, I do a lot of what you said there, where, I find a property that somebody might be interested in, and I kind of point them at like the best material, and that, that might relate back to that.
No, it's really good. And especially, I think with stuff like X-Men and, like those bigger series where it's so encompassing, like I want to go back and read X-Men, but I'm like, where do you even start? Like
that's a great question. And like, how would you like, if somebody wanted to jump into like Marvel stories or DC stories that have like these big universes and tons of characters, like what would you recommend to somebody?
Oh, cool.
Trying to do that?
So for DC, what we would do is we would first figure out what character appeals to them, because you want to kind of gateway somebody in, because it's such a big universe. You don't want to necessarily drop somebody in the middle of Crisis on Infinite Earths or something to that effect. So we would kind of do that, and then we would point them to something like Standalone that starts with one character and then springboards out to the bigger universe. So you would point to something like Green Lantern Rebirth, Green Arrow Year One, Batman Year One, and then use that to kind of like be like, okay, cool, where do you go after Batman Year One? You go to Long Halloween. Where do you go after Green Lantern Rebirth? You go to Green Lantern No Fear. And then from there you can start kind of working them up to where they can jump into like Blackest Night or Infinite Crisis or something like that. For Marvel, it's a lot easier because the big Marvel events are a little bit easier to kind of just dive right on in. And it's almost always Civil War. Civil War is almost always the starting point where if somebody comes in and says, I want to start reading Marvel, I want to follow the universe spanning events, and I don't mind going back a few years, we usually point them at Civil War. If somebody wants to get a little bit more recent, we usually kind of we start drilling down to like what characters have had good runs recently, you know, like Jason Aaron's Thor or Donny Cates Venom, and we kind of get them in to those areas. But to answer your question about X-Men, the number one place I'd recommend to start with X-Men is always going to be Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. It has everything that you're going to want to read in an X-Men comic, but it's also very much like you don't need any backstory beyond what you already know.
Perfect. Because that's one that I've been like, I want to kind of read it from start to finish, but I'm like, oh my God, there's so many.
Yeah, start with Whedon's X-Men, and then you can kind of fill your spots from there.
All right. Now I'm prepared. We really do need this like curating from the guru thing. This is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming to the close of our show, but before we end, let's go around and do some plugs. So let's start with Ashton. Is there anything that you want to promote, and where can people find you online?
Sure. So you can find me online on the Free Comic Book Day pages at Free Comic Book Day on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And to give a quick update on that, unfortunately, there is no update. We are monitoring the situation when we have a rescheduled date. You can find it on those pages, so that's why you're going to want to follow us. Also, you can check me out check all of us out, actually, on Back to Comeback, also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's an initiative to support local comic shops as they begin safely reopening across the country, whatever that means for your state. So curbside delivery, in-store with, social distancing and various policies. So give your shop a shout out, tag some friends, have them shout out their shop, and together we can back to comeback.
Perfect. And what about you, Steve? Where can people find you? Where can they find out information about the shop? How to get in touch with you for your gurudom?
If anybody directly, if anybody has any guru questions, you can get me at steve@thirdeyecomics.com. That's the quickest and fastest way to get me. For Third Eye Comics and all the ways that we're helping you shop safe during all this craziness, all of our locations are open at varying capacities that are in compliance with our local governments. And we are able to tell you all about that stuff at thirdeyecomics.com. Just go to thirdeyecomics.com, and that has everything you need to know. And don't forget, we are selling Third Eye face masks to help you even shop safer and, show off your favorite comic shop.
Yeah, I need one of those. Yes. Oh, look at those.
I want one so bad.
Look at that. I love it. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you guys. That about does it for Comic Talk. I want to thank our guests for joining us. And we'll be doing this every Friday at 4 p.m. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get notified whenever we go live. Also, tune in on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. for Previews Game Night, where we get together and play some games where you can join in the audience and play along. And every Wednesday is Previews World Weekly, also at 4 p.m. You can find all these shows by checking out Previews World on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Until next time, remember, not all heroes wear capes, but right now a lot have to wear masks. See ya.